As I look at the remarkable variety of flowers that are gracing our altar table today, and the sea of your shining faces gathered here, I'm reminded of the unique identities and personalities and theologies we bring as part of this community. We've set aside time today to celebrate not only our uniqueness and particularity as individuals, but also to recognize our interdependence and to reflect on our relationships within this community, our relationships with the wider world, and indeed our relationships with all of creation. And one of the ways that we celebrate both that interdependence and individuality is with this flower communion ceremony, which was founded in 1922 by Norbert Čapek, the founder of the Unitarian Church in Czechoslovakia, and whom we recognize as a Christian martyr. Some of us have heard this story many times, and like any family story, it gets told over and over again. But there are those that are joining us today who have not heard the story. And there are always some nuggets I've found in family stories, things that you start hearing as they get retold that weren't there in the first telling. Norbert Čapek began his life in a small village in what was then Bohemia, and like many Unitarian Universalists, his spiritual journey took him through various religious traditions. He grew up as a Catholic, and at age 18, after becoming disillusioned with that faith, he became a Baptist and was eventually trained as a Baptist minister. He was very successful as a Baptist minister, but under the influence of various teachers and writers, he became more and more convinced that Christianity needed to have a distinctly social message, what we know as a social gospel, that we need to be about creating heaven on earth and not just thinking of heaven at a distant time. But as World War I ignited and his religious views became increasingly liberal, he became in danger of arrest by authorities because of these political and liberal religious writings. And so in 1914, he and his family fled to the United States. Shortly after arriving in the States, he was widowed. He served both as an editor for a Czech language newspaper and as pastor of the First Slovak Baptist Church in Newark, New Jersey. And later he met his wife, Maya Oktovec, who was working at the New York Public Library. As Čapek's theology continued to be more liberal, he concluded that he could no longer be a Baptist. In fact, they were trying him for heresy for 2 accounts. And so in 1919, he resigned his pastorate. He and Maya were planning to return to Czechoslovakia, the new country, but before they did, shortly before that, in 1921, they were introduced to Unitarianism by 2 of his children from a previous marriage who'd gone to a service in Orange, New Jersey. And his children told him that there they found not only clear heads, but warm hearts too. I think you can say the same thing of our congregation. So upon their return to the now independent Czechoslovakia, Čapek established the Prague Congregation of Religious Fellowship. And among that congregation were many ex-Catholics who were reacting strongly against the Catholic faith, had come to find that the traditional communion service of bread and wine was unacceptable. For them it was a dead ritual. But feeling that his new congregation needed some sort of ritual, Čapek turned to the native beauty of the countryside for elements of a service that could be meaningful for them. And so he called it the Flower Festival, and it soon became one of their most significant services. And under Čapek's inspiring leadership, this new religious movement flourished in Prague, and indeed within 10 years, this Unitarian church in Prague grew to 3,000 members, which was the largest Unitarian church in the world at that time. The Nazis began to gain power. And with that, Chopik used his pulpit to encourage his fellow citizens to have the courage in the face of the growing Nazi madness. And he said, "We are today," he said this in 1938, "we are today the only nation in the whole of Europe that is ready to resist oppression. Confronting our descendants, we shall never have to feel ashamed of the fact that as a small nation in the middle of Europe, we were ready to defend human dignity, freedom, and justice from violence, lies, and lawlessness." When it became clear that the Nazis would be invading Czechoslovakia, Norbert Chopik's friends encouraged him to leave the country. With his wide reputation as a religious liberal and newspaper editor, preacher, teacher, and lecturer had put him in quite a dangerous position. But he refused to go, though his wife Maya left at the last moment. And so Chopik continued his work, which became increasingly risky. Because of the monotheistic beliefs of the Unitarians, Chopik accepted into his congregation membership many Jews who would otherwise have been rounded up by the Gestapo. And this gave them the precious time needed to plan their escape from the country. When after 2 years, Dr. Chopik's plan was discovered, he, along with his 29-year-old daughter Zora, were arrested. She for the crime of listening to the BBC on the radio, he for the same offense and for high treason. And the evidence used came from several of his sermons. His daughter Zora was sent to a labor camp, and Norbert was sent to Dachau concentration camp, where he was killed. This flower service came to the United States in the 1940s when his wife, Maja, introduced it to the Cambridge Unitarian Church in Massachusetts. And in a 1961 letter to the American Unitarian Association, this must have been right before the merger, Maya explained Norbert Chopik's flower communion in this way. She said his only motivation was to stress and bring about brotherhood. As a symbol, he used flowers, because in the name of flowers, no wars were waged, as was the case with the cross or the chalice. The flowers are used as symbols of the gifts which each person can make to the church, and through the church to other persons. And because of the large variety, people were able to express their individuality. By exchanging flowers, they said, "I shall walk without reservation with anyone, regardless of their social status or their former religious affiliation, as long as they are ready and willing to go along in the search of truth and service to man." From these beginnings, the flower festival or flower communion service has been adapted and interpreted many ways by different congregations. But the central theme remains constant. As no two flowers are alike, so no two people are alike. Yet each of us have a valuable contribution to make. In our diversity, there is great beauty. Together, we are so much more than we are alone. So while Norbert Chopik has left us the legacy of this beautiful ritual, he's also left us the legacy of his willingness to fight and to die, defending human dignity, freedom, and justice. So if we are to continue Chopik's legacy, let us do so not by simply placing a beautiful flower in a vase and saying some words about individuality and community and then taking another flower away without being transformed. Let us continue that legacy by working to transform ourselves and to transform our communities. There is still much work to be done to bring about beloved community. I've said these words before from Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, but they bear repeating. He says that the central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered among the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice alone, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be done, and our strength is too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens and our strength is renewed. May it be so.